Welcome, Damian. Thank you very much for agreeing to come on to the podcast. It's great to have you here today.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. I honestly, it is a mega privilege to actually be here today because of the amount of respect that I have for you and what you do. And after we connected 2 months ago, I think it was at Ollie's event, just to kind of like fast forward and find myself doing this with you, it means a lot. So I really appreciate you having me here.
Thank you very much. I shall take that compliment in the way that it is intended. So thank you. So I'm going to ask you the same question I ask all my guests. What is your money story?
Oh, money story. So, I think if I really just kind of break down, let's say, the past decade, of my adulting part of my life, where I've been actively working, been making money. So I'm 30 years old at the moment. So, coming out of school, 18, obviously had a gap year, did a bit of traveling, but then started working actively at about 2021, making my own money as a personal trainer. I think it's good now. This is a good time at least to look back on the past 10 years and say, okay, well, what has your story actually been when it comes to money? And I don't think I've actually reflected on it as much as I should or could have, or I think most people do. I don't think anyone really says, okay, well, over the past 10 years of you building a career, what's been like the common money theme? So,
Absolutely.
you're the first person to actually ask me that. So, to sit here and really reflect on what the past 10 years have been, I think there's definitely been not any frugality. Like, I think when I make money, I like to spend it on things that I do like and enjoy. I'm also not reckless with money. So I don't, the second I get money, it's all of a sudden gone. I do like to save a bit. I do like to spend. I do like to, live within my means as well. I'm not really a flashy person, so I don't like to go and buy expensive, unnecessary things. But I think there's definitely been a massive level of low education when it comes to money. Because, I think when you're in school, sure, you get taught economics, there's like an economics class that you have once a day, once every 2 days. But, this is essentially taught by people that don't run their own businesses.
Absolutely.
I think that's one thing that I overheard a while ago. They were like, but your business teacher doesn't own a business, and your art teacher is not actually an artist, and your drama teacher is not necessarily a high paid actor. So, we actually all kind of get taught a lot of these skills from people that don't actually have the first-hand experience of, essentially the careers that you might want to take. This is really not me putting down any of my tutors or teachers, by the way. They're honestly, they couldn't have done a better job. But I think just going back to the education part, I left school with no education on even how to invoice somebody or even how to pay my taxes. I didn't even know what VAT was up until like 5 years ago. The first 5 or 6 years of my personal training career, I didn't even pay my tax because I just didn't actually have any guidance. I had an accountant, sure, but there was also no education from that perspective. So I think if I look at like the past decade, there's definitely been, from my side, not enough awareness of how to use my money to make me more money, or how to bank my money correctly, or utilize certain loopholes when it comes to your business and your finances. So yeah, if I kind of look at where I'm at currently, I'm pretty happy with my income. I'm pretty happy with how I do spend my money because, as I said, I'm not reckless. But I would say that there's been like a level of insecurity almost when it comes to how to actually manage my money, if I can put it like that.
And would you say that your attitude towards money, your relationship with money, would you say that has come from your parents?
100%. Like if I look at my dad was a very generous person. Let's just say it like that. He would take us on holiday more than once a year, go and explore the world. So I think that's where I get a lot of that's where I like to spend money, is experiences, is traveling. So if you really had to kind of look at my bank accounts and see, okay, where was this money spent? That's in foreign currency, maybe in the UK, or maybe traveling around to Greece or Turkey. So these are definitely traits that, from an expenditure perspective, I got from my dad. I've also got, the smarter, more, let's say, someone who's more conservative on the spending money aspect is from my mom. So definitely that's where I got taught a lot of my current habits, when it comes to saving and to spending. But I think growing up, there was never any worry about money. So my dad always provided, even if he was under stress to provide. There was never any. I think he was also smart. He was definitely somewhat frugal to an extent. Like, if you can get it cheaper, go get it cheaper. For me, sometimes I don't really carry that approach. I'm like, you know what, the most expensive is the best. Because that's also kind of how I look at myself with my service, my coaching service is, I offer a premium service, and I charge a premium rate for it. So I know that, if someone's going to speak with conviction to me about me buying into their service or their products, I'm like, great, I'll spend the cash. So I think that's where I definitely do differ, because there were also sometimes, if I look at how my dad was, you could either go and spend a lot on something, or you could go to the Chinese shop and get it, right? And so that was the thing, is that, like, then there would be things from the Chinese shop that then wouldn't work, or would stop working, or wouldn't be good quality. And so I think it's through that I'm like, I'm not going to go that route. I would rather spend X, Y, and Z, which sometimes is good, sometimes is also not good. Sometimes you don't need to spend so much money on something. But I would definitely say, from my childhood and my upbringing with my parents, 100%, that's definitely where it was instilled.
And are there aspects of your relationship with money that you would like to change or are actively working on to change?
100,000%. There are definitely some things that I would love to change. I think where my difficulties come from in terms of, like, managing money is maybe just not spending enough time to understand money, right? Like, and I think I'll just kind of like delve into that a little bit deeper. What I mean is that, there are so many resources out there, and there are so many people, like, such as yourself. There's so many people that really do know what they're doing. And it's kind of like me taking a step back and saying, well, I'm a fitness coach and I know what I'm doing. And, I would expect someone to reach out to me if they wanted to change their body and their health and their fitness. And I think I've just not done enough of the reaching out from a money perspective. I've reached out from a business coaching perspective, so how I can market myself better. I've reached out to TMP from a mindset coaching perspective. I've also reached out to a fitness coach who does a lot of my programming for my own personal fitness and training. But I've not reached out to a credible person that deals with money and can actually give me the right advice and guidance that I think, yeah, it's essential. You need a mentor to equip you with the tools that you do not have. And I think that's maybe the one thing during school, during education, even when I went to go study personal training, there's no module on how to become a business owner in the fitness industry and be smart with your money. Because the reality is, a lot of personal trainers, without offending anyone, the reality is that, we're personal trainers because we're not good with finances, we're good with physical fitness, right? So, all of a sudden, expecting someone who's really good at physical fitness, who's done lots of bodybuilding shows and photo shoots, and you've been a brand ambassador to lots of fitness brands, how can you expect this person to all of a sudden, through all of that, now equip themselves with a money mindset education? It never happened for me, at least. So I think definitely the one thing I need to work on is sticking my hand up, and actually asking for the right help.
And I think that is very true, though, for all majority, probably better than to say all, the majority of entrepreneurs, business owners, we can get into a mindset that we should be able to do it all. We should be able to have all the skills as well as the core skill that we are selling. rather than actually recognizing, in corporates, you are put into silos. You're either in sales, or you're in marketing, or you're in product development, or you're in finance. And therefore, you don't need to have that entire skill set. It is about the outreach as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, to say, well, actually, I'm bloody good at this, but I'm not quite so good at that. And therefore, I'm going to find out who I should connect with, get a recommendation, reach out, and actually form a relationship with somebody who can support me in those particular areas. What do you think is stopping you right now from doing that outreach?
I think it's when you're trying to wear too many hats, right? And you think that you can get away with it. Especially in the fitness coaching industry, everything that you've just mentioned there, like the marketing, the sales, the outreach, the accounting, when you are a fitness entrepreneur, I don't think you ever foresee that you're going to have to wear all these hats. I certainly didn't. When I started personal training at 21 years old, I did personal training for 9 years. I was bodybuilding at the time. I had lots of credibility of, getting lots of clients, through me just having a good physique. That was it. That was the marketing. Fast forward 10 years after building that credibility, after having worked with literally thousands of people, then COVID happened. And all of a sudden I had to take all these clients online. So now it's, how do you delegate things online? How do I pervade this world-class service that I'm so used to doing in person, but now I have to become a techie. Now I have to spend time on a computer. Like now I need to actually learn a lot of these tools. So I think if you are an online coach that comes from a personal training background, it's a huge adjustment where you're bombarded with a lot of these hats that you have to wear. And one of them is obviously your invoicing, is your financing, is still paying your tax like you would as a PT, but to even understand how you can write things off from a different perspective now. You're not just writing clothing off because you're wearing it, to go and personal train people, but you've got equipment that you're investing in, you've got mentorship that you're investing in, you've got applications that you're paying on a monthly subscription, and there's so many different things that all of a sudden frazzle you out. I'll admit, like, beginning of this year, I got extremely burnt out. This was the first time that I sat there and like fucking cried my eyes out because I felt so stuck and I had absolutely like nobody to really like kind of get me out of that. Sure, I had Ollie and I did have, a few people within my industry that I could speak to, but the reality is they're also stuck in front of computers. They're also wearing all these hats. So, how do I really pull myself out of that stress and that anxiety was getting the right people on board with me. And so this is when I reached out to like Kieran from Total Mental Performance, from a mindset perspective to help me out. This is where I reached out to Joe Parrish to help me, from a fitness and training perspective. So I didn't have to worry too much about that. Going back to your question of, what stopped me from, maybe consolidating, let's say now the accounting and the finances perspective of that. I was speaking with Ollie about this and, I'm pretty transparent about it. I like to do my own invoicing. I like to make sure that every invoice that is sent out is personally done by me. I don't do subscriptions. So even though all my clients are on subscriptions, I like to be the one that's sending that out so that I know it's sent. I know that I can follow up with that person. And I know that if they haven't paid, I'm on top of it and not the Stripe system or the app or whatever the case is. That obviously takes time. It obviously takes time to follow up with people when they don't pay. And that I think also causes a little bit of a stress, and you don't want to have those conversations with people, not because I'm insecure about having money conversations, but because other people are generally they want to tiptoe around the topic of money, and to have to say to someone, hey, look, your invoice is 2 weeks late, unpaid. Then they start getting despondent. Then they stop replying. Then it becomes this really uncomfortable thing, which I think through you actually at Ollie's event, like I realized you don't need to be uncomfortable with it. And, the way that I realized that is because I was in a room full of people that I all thought had their shit going on. Like I was like, these are all the best people that I know in the industry. I'm sitting in a room with all of them. That is unbelievable. And then we do this activity where all of a sudden we're finding out about what the general consensus and feeling is about money. And I realized, whoa, there's no reason for me to be insecure about this at all. But 99% of the clients that I work with have not gone through an experience like that. They've not gone through, you know, a discussion, an open discussion, a transparent discussion that money is just this thing that like and it's the word. It's actually just the word that freaks us out. And I don't know who I listened to the other day where they said just read it backwards and then it won't make sense. If you read the word money backwards, it won't make sense. Of which then all that emotive like attachment that you put to the word, it actually disappears when you realize that it's just letters. It's just words. So but going back to the topic of why I've not consolidated it, I think it's just because I'm stuck. If I can just be completely dead honest with you, it's one of those things that I think you want to maintain such a stronghold on because it is money, right? Like it is maybe the most important factor of running a business. And I think when you want to really kind of like grip onto that and hold on to that and not trust someone else with that, it stops you from making the move. But the reality is that like I'm not holding on to it and giving it to someone else. I'm just saying, hey, this is the advice that I actually need. And I think that's where I've maybe struggled to kind of like let go of that responsibility.
And very often, I think that is the last thing that a business owner does let go of. It is recognizing that actually the reason why most businesses fail is not because the business owner is not brilliant at the core service or core product they offer. It's because other people don't pay them on time. And that accumulation of not being paid on time. Therefore, the one aspect a lot of people feel they want to control is the flow and payment in of those invoices. But the downside of that is you can only scale and really grow when you are working on and not, sorry, working on and not in. So working on, but not in your business. And if managing the invoices at the moment is so emotionally important to you, then that can be a limiting factor in terms of being able to scale, not to grow. It's not a factor in not being able to grow necessarily, but it can be a factor in terms of learning to scale.
For sure. And if I look at giving responsibility over to others, for example, I've got a graphic designer who does my graphic design. I've got someone that's doing my website. I do have people doing things for me that if I had to sit there and try and learn how to use Photoshop and put these extravagant designs together, and that would take me even further away from being able to scale, right? So I definitely do understand that there's a huge importance on handing responsibilities over to other people so that I can actually pull myself out of the business and focus on driving it forward instead of, as you say, being stuck in the business. Because, then you're not really giving a lot of time, effort, or energy to the bigger picture. You're focusing on these small things, and these small things add up to a lot of time that gets spent. I can spend a whole afternoon sending out invoices or following up with people, and then all of a sudden there's an emotive like connection to these invoicing, because why is this not being paid? Well, this is not being paid after 5 days. There's thoughts of, okay, well, should I then automate email responses or like email reminders for someone that in a week you are going to receive an invoice and this needs to please be paid on time. But if I just hand that responsibility over to someone else, that's their job, that's what they're good at, that's it. I don't have to stress about sending emails now and following up with people. But I definitely, now that like I'm speaking about it, and obviously it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you need to act on this immediately, because I can definitely see that it does cause a bit of stress, you know,
Yeah.
and it's an unnecessary stress.
Absolutely. And I think for lots of people, when it comes to the money side of, of their business, it can be the one side that they want to kind of almost, bury their head in the sand and kind of go, well, yeah, it's important, but it's not my core activity. My core activity, in your case, is your personal training clients. But it's only when it potentially either becomes a problem or becomes an actual solution, will they actually then find the motivation. And very often the only way we learn about money is when it becomes a problem, and we have to learn from our mistakes. I don't know if there's anybody really who goes, yeah, I'm sorted about money because I read a book. So I've not ever had a single problem. I read a book. It's more VAT. Sorry, what was VAT? When should I be adding it? When should I be paying it? How much should I be paying? It's because you had a reminder from the tax man that your income threshold is now over a certain point, etc., etc. And
Yeah,
then, shit, I haven't actually put any of that money aside. I haven't charged that client that. This looks familiar
that
to you.
is too familiar. You literally, like, how funny is this? So I was living in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands has got a 21% VAT on everything, right? But that's only Netherlands to Netherlands, right? Like, if I've got a Dutch registered company, I can only charge 21% to people that are in the Netherlands, right? But 90% of my clients are not from the Netherlands. They are from Australia, from Switzerland, from South Africa. And here I was for the first year of my coaching, charging every single person 21% VAT. And it took one of my clients in South Africa to be like, hey, dude, why are you charging me VAT? And I'm like, what do you mean? That's the VAT rate. He's like, yeah, but I'm in South Africa. You shouldn't be charging me anything for that matter. I was like, okay, yeah, let me just let me get back to you on that one. I'm not too sure. I called my accountant. She's like, no, you shouldn't be doing that at all. I was like, what? Like, no one sat here and explained this to me. Like, nobody, right? So obviously then when it came to submitting my tax, that had a huge difference between what I'm paying as a business, what I'm paying personal.
Yeah.
And it, yeah, essentially that's really set me back by a few months, and not just like financially where like, oh, okay, well, now I'm really in trouble. I definitely wasn't in trouble because of that, but it just meant that I had to sit back and actually kind of understand the system a little bit more, of which I still don't, that's why I employed really good accountants, and they're actually really good at what they do. I submit everything that I earn, that I spend, what of these invoices are from Dutch to Dutch accounts, what are the rest from an international perspective, and then they give me the numbers. They just tell me what I owe and what I do not owe. But that doesn't do justice to, let's say, my expenditure, right? Because like, I think when you're spending I know exactly how much I need to pay from a tax perspective based on what I earn. Great. That's a percentage. Cool. But you start spending money on this, you start traveling for this, you start, when you do travel, eating out. What is deductible? What's not deductible? What, can I put through as a business expense? These are all things that like, no, there is nobody teaching me this. And
I know.
so I have to wait until my quarterly submission to get that feedback, get that education from my accountant. So yeah, it's definitely not something that we learned in school, which is
No.
frustrating.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And and it was a very, very valid comment with regards to, economics and business studies are being taught by employed people who have never run a business. And actually, you can't, I don't think, teach the nuts and bolts of running a business purely from a theoretical perspective. Yeah, you can't. It has got to be that applied learning through doing it, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've learned more from stuffing up than reading a book.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, totally agree with you.
And I don't even feel like I've stuffed up yet. Like that's the thing is I haven't found myself in a dire straits like scenario where I'm thinking, oh no, like this, it's all or nothing. I'm either going to lose my house or my this and that. I'm not going to be able to eat. Like I haven't found myself in that position yet. And like I'm not saying, oh well, I'm inviting it with open arms,
Can
right?
I say, can you touch wood as you say that?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
my hand's on the table, but it's not like I'm inviting it, right? But I don't even feel like I've really like kind of hit that wall where it's like, oh fuck, now I'm really forced to like, have to learn absolutely everything. It's more just like I think even a luxury at some point to be able to be equipped with those tools and that knowledge because yeah, I know that I need it. But I think I'm also just in a very comfortable position where things are just operating
Yeah.
and things are moving forward without me starving, that I then have now not actually prioritized going over and above to learn more about
Yeah. Yeah.
taxes, finances, etc.
And and it can very often be on on that needs to know basis. What's really interesting, at the point of us recording this podcast today, I noticed that Mark Zuckerberg had to send out an email this morning to all his employees saying, apologies, but I've made a mistake, and that mistake has meant 10,000 of you are going to lose your jobs. And
Unreal.
he will be clearly berated for that. I am not the biggest fan of Facebook, not least because my account got hacked a few weeks ago and they wouldn't give me my account back. So I've lost
Wow.
my account now. And at that point in time, I didn't actually believe anybody did work for Facebook at all, other than Mark Zuckerberg, because trying to get hold of anybody is impossible.
True.
But Mark Zuckerberg is probably a really good example, of somebody who started a little cottage industry while he was at university, had a great idea. It grew to be a bigger idea and then grew to be something absolutely massive. And he was just learning as he was going until he's tried something and it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
And it's resulted in a big lot of learning, not just for him but for those people who are going to lose their job
Yeah,
as
for
a
sure.
result. But I think what a lot of people don't appreciate, if you are not a business owner, if you are not an entrepreneur, and you have chosen, or it's been chosen for you, to be employed, actually, just like being a parent, there isn't that manual. You don't get presented that manual that says, this is how you run a business. This is how you're an entrepreneur. This is how to be a perfect parent. And no mistakes will happen because they're covered in that handbook. It's usually only when you make that mistake can you then go and find somebody to help either to undo that mistake or in some way reduce the impact of that mistake.
Sure. For sure. I think while we're speaking about CEOs, I don't know if you're familiar with someone called Ben Francis and the brand Gymshark.
Yes. Yes. I
So
knew the name. Yes.
yeah, so like brilliant strategic move that he made was that he started Gymshark from his garage. He was printing these t-shirts in his garage like as a teenager, right? And the company has gone on to, I'm sitting here wearing Gymshark, like the company has gone on to make billions. But strategically, this one hands over the role of CEO to someone who knows more, hands over the roles to people that have got the credibility to run a company, because he wasn't equipped with the certain tools and education to reach that dream, reach that goal of making it a multi-billion-dollar company. He's rivaling Nike. Like that's insane for a company that's less than 10 years, well, is 10 years old, to be on that level where they've got shops in the high street in London. Like it's actually unbelievable. But it wouldn't have gotten to that point if he didn't actually hand over the role to someone else, right? And so that's a prime example of handing over and delegating responsibilities to people and reaching up, putting your hand up and saying, like, I don't know enough about this, but I think where a lot of mistakes also can be made, and this is maybe a mistake that I've made, and I'm learning without it being too much of an aggressive lesson being taught, is that if you do not have all the hats, don't try wear them. Like, I don't know enough about certain, areas of body composition or performance, and therefore I don't go there. If someone said to me, Damian, I love what you do. I think you're absolutely phenomenal. I want you to help me get better at doing a 500-meter sprint. I'm going to say, dude, I'm not your guy. Because I focus on body recomposition and getting people into great shape, not running a 500-meter sprint. So, I think it's just really important that you kind of take a step back and you realize, like, what are you capable of? What are you not capable of? And hand that responsibility over. Like, that's any successful person will tell you, hand that responsibility over.
Yeah. So you're going to hand over the responsibility for your invoicing.
110% I will, though, because, like, I think also it's great to have that involvement, but it also, if I look back on the other side of the coin and I say, yeah, but there is a little bit of stress, there is a little bit of time that you're spending on it. Sure, you don't have to automate it, but at least employ someone to do it once a week, or have it on a retainer basis. That might just be a good option. But I do like having these conversations with people. It's not like I love having the conversation that makes someone else feel insecure about why they don't want to pay the invoice, why they haven't paid the invoice. But I feel like it's more growth on my side to have these conversations, because that's what sets you apart from other people, is like, that's where people would shy away from. They don't want to have that conversation about money. Like, I'll be very transparent about, like, how much money I have and how much money I don't have. I'm definitely not a millionaire, but I'm also not flat broke. I also don't know absolutely everything about how to manage money, but I also am not stupid. Like, so, I'm in a place of growth, and I feel like having these conversations, it goes beyond just the topic of money. It goes more towards understanding people and how they feel. And you pick up things from different people when you have these conversations that are all kind of a common theme almost, and is it money, or is it you not getting the perceived value that I'm offering? If we can look at that, then I can look at myself here and I can actually say, well, how can I provide more value? So, the money topic is actually a really nice door to open sometimes, because it becomes quite self-reflective. Even if they're the ones that are not paying, or they're not paying on time, you might be the reason why they're reluctant to pay. So then also take a look at yourself here and say, okay, are they getting the value? If they're not, let me have that value conversation with them about how I can actually level up my service to make them want to buy in again. So it's a conversation that I actually need to have this afternoon with somebody. So it doesn't really bother me that much. I'm human.
And it's very good to have that level of self-awareness, though, to recognize, having that conversation is not a one-way street. It isn't just based on your perception of why you need to have the conversation. And that can be why so many people find the whole conversation about money difficult, because they are placing their own expectation, their own reasons why somebody hasn't paid, or how somebody is going to respond to that conversation, or what the outcome is going to be of that conversation. If you go into it with less attachment to the result, doesn't mean you don't want the result, but less attachment to it, and go in to listen, go in to understand, and then actually see almost to see the human behind the invoice, the human behind the amount, and what their reasons are for saying yes to your service, no to your service, not paying on time, what's going on for them, etc., etc. That does allow you to have a much more productive conversation.
For sure. Look, I've had some pretty rough conversations, like, in my career about paying, and some of them have definitely been more so on my side, like, kind of having to take a look back and say, okay, but this person was actually really unhappy, and that's why they didn't want to pay, or they wanted their money back. before you go and put blame on them and you say, well, you didn't do your job, right? Because I think it's also very important in the fitness coaching industry that, sure, you're paying me for a certain result, but I don't deliver the result. You have to work for the result, right? And so, let's say we enter, and I had this issue 2 days ago, and I spoke with Ollie about this, is, let's say you invest quite a substantial amount of money and you don't do the work, right? I can tick all my boxes. I can say, hey, look, I followed up with you. You needed to fill out a weekly check-in form. You needed to book in your weekly check-in call with me. When you didn't do either of those, then I dropped you a message. I'm making sure that things are being tracked, but they're not being tracked. So from a coaching perspective, I make sure that I tick all my boxes, and I will always go over and above. And I'm happy to have any client that's even listening to this right now, like, attest to that, is that I'm really passionate about what I do and I love it. And I've been doing it for 10 years, and I think people don't last in any industry for that long if there's not a certain level of passion behind what you're doing. You can't last 10 years doing something if it's just about money.
Totally agree.
And so, I had someone who was really just super fucking pissed off and they wanted their money back. I thought, okay, before I enter this conversation, because there's going to be a conflict, like, I can try and be as nice as possible, but this person is standing in their conviction that I didn't provide the value, that they are not happy with the service, and whatever I say it's not going to actually change how they feel. So before I actually state facts here, let me just take a moment back and see, okay, were there any boxes that I didn't tick? Was there actually something that I was responsible for from a communications perspective, programming, feedback, any communications? And then I saw, okay, you know what? I've ticked all my boxes. Like, I know that I have also the system that I use, the way in which I communicate. It's worked for hundreds of people. I don't need to actually sit here and try and find problems when there are none.
Yeah.
You did not do the work. That's the bottom line. And so that's where I state fact and I say, okay, cool. This is why you actually did not get the value that you came for, but I think it's really important that if there are ever any grievances or there are any conversations with money, that it has to be a reflexive process as well. Because, if I'm going to completely ignore something that I've done wrong, and then that's putting blame on you, right? And I don't want to ever put blame on, like, the last thing I want to do is put blame on a client. But I think it has to be a two-way street here. You have to be reflective with it.
And I love that because it shows real self-value from your perspective, but also valuing the client as well. Because I think there can be a tendency, if your relationship with money is not where it needs to be, actually, as you know, it's a reflection of your lack of self-worth and self-value. And in those instances, the last thing you want to do is to have a conversation with a client about it, because you don't want them to potentially, as far as you're concerned, be reinforcing your lack of value.
100%.
Yeah.
Whereas he was saying things to me that, had I not had that level of awareness for myself, I would have taken seriously negatively. Like, to say, Damian, that's really poor form that you're thinking only about the money, and like, this is really unprofessional of you. Like, sure, if I didn't have that self-awareness where I reflected on, have I provided the value that I said I was going to provide on that call that we had on the first day? Then we had a run-through call. So we spoke for 2 hours about the level of service and what I was going to do and what you were going to do. Had I not reflected on a lot of this and said, okay, I've covered my ass, I've covered my bases, I've done my absolute best here. If I didn't have that conversation with myself, and then I had someone saying, you're unprofessional, you didn't give me the value that I wanted, you promised and under-delivered. These are all things that were said to me the other day. And honestly, I read that and I said, nah, man, sorry, you're not going to guilt trip me here. You're not going to make me feel bad, because I know what I've done and what I've not done. And I know that what I do works, but 99.9, you can't please everybody. No, that's okay. That's fine. That's business. most businesses please less people than they do more people, and they still thrive, because they're focusing on the amount of people that actually are doing the do and doing the work and following through. Retention is great, sure, but each industry has a very different level of retention, and sometimes not every business model is catered towards every client. And this was just the 1% that I've unfortunately worked with that was not happy. But at the same time, this is why I have a promise and agreement form, getting you to promise me that you will do X, Y, and Z. And so, I know that I've done my ABCs, but his X, Y, and Zs weren't followed through with. And it was a self-reflective comment that was made from him. So you're putting a lot of this on me, saying that I didn't provide value, but in reality, that's actually a very self-reflective thing that you're saying, because you didn't actually do the work, but you don't want to take responsibility for it at all. But I definitely think that these are the emotions that don't get spoken about in the fitness industry. These are the conversations that don't get had. And I think that definitely, had I not maybe committed to some level of growth over the past year to look at myself for answers, I most probably would have been pretty beaten up by some of the things that he would have said to me. But yeah, you have to have those conversations with yourself. It's so, so important.
Absolutely. And I think that that is why in the work that I do, I will always say, as because you'll have heard this, that our relationship with money is actually nothing to do with the money. It's our relationship with ourselves that in turn gets reflected by our relationship with money. And once we have a greater awareness of the value that we are bringing, and our conversation about our pricing and our invoicing, etc., reflects that value, everything else becomes so easy, because you are not thinking, should I be discounting? Should I not be charging? Should I just be letting that unpaid invoice go? No, when you've got all the value built in correctly at each point in that conversation, it's a no-brainer then. It's a comfortable conversation, at least for you. Not necessarily comfortable for the person on the other end, but you can't control their thoughts and feelings, their sense of value. You can only do it for you. So you have just beautifully illustrated that there. So what I'd like to ask you now is, you've been in business coming on for 10 years, as you've said. What would you say are the major lessons that you have learned in that 10-year journey?
When it comes to money.
Or wider, the podcast, Let's Talk Money and More. So it doesn't have to be specifically money.
Lesson. Wow. Okay. No one's asked me that either. I did actually an Instagram post a few weeks ago on like the 3 biggest things that I've learned as a PT. But I think if I'm just going to look at it from a business perspective, or as just an overview of the past 10 years, I'm going to relate this to money and to business, because I think that's the one thing that I do kick myself over and over and over, is just saying, start saving young. Like, start saving. That's one thing that I did not do. And start investing. Like, these are things that I really, I've lived life to the fullest. Like, I'm not going to negate that. Like, I've taken my money and I've traveled. I've gone to Thailand. I've gone to Greece. I've gone, like, really, I've not held back on living a good life. I'm not someone who is flashy where, hey, let's go and have a Lamborghini in Dubai and spend $3,000 on accommodation somewhere for the night. Like, but definitely, I think a lot of my current emotions that are related to where I'm at in life, and I'm 30 now, I think we always want to be further than where we are. And I think looking at where I'm at now, I would have loved a little bit more stability in my pocket. If I can say, like, sure, you want to actually go and do a startup? Cool. Like, there's this really good idea, and do you have the loan from the bank? Do you have the credibility to get that loan? Or if you don't get the loan, do you actually have the money in the bank to front it yourself? I think because of my lack of education, and because of me just going at such a pace where it was client. At one point, I had 12 clients in a day, 13 clients in a day. And so, you're on the floor for 12, 13 hours. You get up at 4:30 in the morning, first client's 5:30. You get home at 9:30 in the evening. You're not even getting enough sleep to like facilitate the right amount of energy. But for me, that's fine. I was lasting on adrenaline for a lot of the time. And yeah, sure, there was definitely a lot of burnout. So I think that would maybe be my second biggest thing to anyone that's listening in my industry at least. Manage that burnout, because I know 80% of people that are in this industry are burning themselves out. And it doesn't have to be 12 clients on the floor every single day. It could be 5 clients, but then you training cardio and then training weights in the evening. And so from an energy perspective, you're burning yourself out. Burnout is such a real thing. I studied burnout last year as part of like just an extracurricular education for my life coaching. And burnout is so real. Like it's one thing that I didn't realize I had. And that's one thing actually that I would say, manage the burnout, because after 8, 9, 10 years of doing something and not realizing that you have this issue, it really catches up with you. And it kills your motivation, So I think that where I was burning out and not spending enough time or energy on developing my awareness, my education, financially, led me then to never consolidating any of that. So I never saved. I never banked any cash. I never invested anything. I put a bit of money into Bitcoin, and luckily I pulled my Bitcoin out on the 31st of December 2017, which was like a week before I think that whole crash happened. So I was like, sick, cool, got my money, like that's it, I'm done. But that was like the furthest that I ever, and that wasn't even calculated. That was just me like getting on the train as everyone else did, right? So yeah, I think the most important thing would be to kind of look at, over the past 10 years, I wish that I'd invested. I wish that I'd really built up that level of understanding when it came to anything financially, and just sticking with one thing at least and repeating that. Instead of getting lost in trying to invest and save and this and that and do a million different things, it was just, what's the one thing that I could have done, and just made sure that I stuck with that, because things could definitely be different now for sure. And maybe in a better way, maybe in a worse way. I think sometimes the more money you have, the more problems you have. If you don't have the right mindset attached to that, right? So it really is a bit of a full circle thing here, where I wish I did have more money, but more of a mindset actually on money, which that's
that is the big thing, actually. It is the mindset, without a shadow of a doubt. So the obvious question from there then is, what do you wish to be able to achieve over the next 10 years? So you're having this conversation with me in 10 years' time. You're saying on the podcast, Lesley, I'm now 40.
Yeah.
What will you be saying?
Oh, that's great, because I've spent so much of this year reflecting on what I want for the next 10 years. As I mentioned when we saw each other at the Upgrade to Premium, I did something called self-authoring by Jordan B. Peterson, and that was really just it was future authoring. So it was what I want in the next 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And the most important thing, like through that, there were three main goals for me, and 3 things that I'm chasing at the moment. And the first was to interact and surround myself with successful people only. That's it. Is like, I love my friends. I love a lot of my family, and sure, a lot of them are not. I'm not really speaking so much about my family here, but I'm speaking more so about my previous social circle. Is that there's not a lot of motivation. They're not really highly, massively driven, successful people. But they're all good at what they do, and they all enjoy what they do. But for me, it's more so that I want to hang around, and now going forward, just interact with people that I aspire to be like, and aspire that when I see Ollie, for example, and I just, I know that he's also maybe got his own stresses and things that, go on in his life, but when I see the level of just how, like, honestly, how good he is with people, firstly, and how much he cares and how much he puts into his business, that for me is success. I don't look at the success from a monetary perspective. That's so irrelevant. It's more the impact that you're making on other people's lives. So that was my first thing, was definitely hang around successful people. 10 years from now, the second one would have been to actually have a fully functioning body composition and recomposition gym, where we've got about 5 to 10 personal trainers that are all going through the same education system. So that's a very standardized approach. We're not bringing in too many different people with different levels of expertise. This is the service offering. This is what we do. We're great at it. And we have an in-house education system. So that's going to be hopefully in the next 5 years. Actually, I'm not even going to say 10 years from now. So I think through that, there'll be a lot of learning curves, and there'll be a lot of people that I'm going to have to pull into the business to consolidate different areas of its growth, because I don't know anything about fire systems and irrigation and all those things, right? So just like, you know, you don't know anything about that. You also don't know much about the business acumen side of things. So definitely get someone on board there. And then the third one was educate myself on more than just like business. So it would actually be more so trying different things that are outside my scope, and trying things that are not within the fitness and health realm, and just collecting a lot of like different experiences and different you know, ways of doing things, and you know, maybe more traveling, and maybe more, you know, trying things that are so out of my comfort zone, to actually see if this is what I want to actually be doing, right? Because I got involved in this when I was, my dad started training me in the gym at 16. I never wanted to be a personal trainer. I still, you know, we would go and train, and then I would go and get drunk with my friends that afternoon, you know, like this was never the thing for me.
That was balance, though.
Balance at 16. Like
Yeah,
if anything, you should spend at 16, you should sometimes spend more time drinking than you should like it was, you know. But then it got to like serious 19, 20. Then I competed at 21. I won my first show, and then I won again. And then it kind of, you know, and then I thought, oh, well, I'm really good at this. Let me study personal training. But, you know, did I really actually have any of my 20s to kind of sit back and say, well, is this really actually what you wanted to do, or is this what you fell into? So I think a lot of, you know, what I'm after at the moment is definitely to continue experiencing new things and trying new things, and actually seeing, hey, is there another, like life is a fork, right? And you can like go so many, like there's so many different directions. And so just don't want to get stuck in you know, in just robotically doing the same thing all the time. And you know what, this is the goal for sure: opening the gym, being around successful people, becoming synonymous with body recomposition and getting people in shape. That's my passion. That's my calling. I absolutely love it. But there's so many different things in life that I could incorporate into that, and so many different perspectives that I could you know, bring in and actually say, okay, well, you know, maybe I want to go more on the holistic health approach, or maybe I want to go on some more of the bodybuilding approach, you know. So still trying to kind of figure that out. And I think one thing that Ollie says, you know, is date the niche, don't marry it. And that's kind of where I'm at the moment, you know. And it's an exciting journey. So 10 years from now, I would love to be sitting here saying, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that I didn't know anything about my finances and my taxes and all these, because you know what? Just like you learn about healthy food, and just like you learn about what the right exercise is, like that's your health aspect of your life. And in life, you have your health, you've got your family and relationships, you've got your finances, right? Like these are all easily learnable things.
And holistic, you know, once you have that all sorted holistically, that is when you can have that self-reflection of, I'm here, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I'm going to enjoy the growth that comes. And a life of regret, if there ever was, you know, regret, gets left behind, because you're moving in the way with the people, doing the things that you want to and enjoy, and not necessarily always chasing after the next thing, but looking forward to what follows next as well.
For sure. And I think having finances working on your side for that, and like having that peace of mind and that clarity when it comes to your finances, it makes doing things so much easier and so much more enjoyable. Instead of saying, oh, well, fuck, I've just paid for these flights or this hotel. Oh, now when we get there, now I actually have to really watch my money. But then you get there, and I'm speaking from personal experience here, is that then you get there, right? And all of a sudden, You're like, no, I'm here, I'm on holiday, I'm gonna have a good time, I'm gonna spend the money, I'll worry about it later. Then you get back home and it's like, oh shit, like now I'm in trouble.
The ghost
Like
of Christmas
now,
past, or the ghost of
that's
holiday
it. And it's
past.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, now I'm actually going, like, I've dedicated the next 3 weeks to actually seeing friends that have flown in from X, Y, and Z. Obviously, I have to take them out and go for dinner. And, that's when like this underlying level of like anxiety, stress, and I'll be dead honest, it can lead to depression. It can lead
Yeah.
to real insecurity, and it can, and I know that 99% of people that I know are dealing with this, like, and nobody is talking about it, and nobody is being, and it's a simple conversation. Like, it really is. Like, I can tell you firsthand, I've had seriously bad parts of this year because of money, because I've actually sat there and allowed it to stress me out. And was it really stressful? Because I was actually making quite a lot, but it was my relationship with chasing money. I was chasing it, right? And so what did that lead to? That led to neglect of other areas of my life.
Yeah.
Once I started neglecting other areas of my life because I became so focused on trying to make money and make sure that I was financially secure, what happens? My relationship fucked up. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, chasing business all the time destroyed my relationship with someone. And then having to kind of recoup from that and try and figure that whole process out on its own. Yeah, dude, you maybe should have just had a bit of a better mindset when it came to your work and your business.
Yeah.
And I think like that's the learning curve for the future, right? Is that like, yeah, you can either choose to stay there and not equip yourself, and then this can happen again, and then it can snowball, or you can just take a few steps back, say, okay, learning curve, not the end of the world. Now I need to actually regroup and yeah, kind of refill the tank, but with more knowledge and education.
And that's just it, I think, mindset, is everything. And I think you've just demonstrated that. So how can people connect with you, Damian?
Legendary. So you can find me on Instagram. Firstly, I think that's probably the most accessible for everybody. It's at Damian_the all-rounder. And I've just launched my new website, which people can also get in touch with me there. And that is allroundercoaching.com. And that's, I think, the most simple way. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. I'm pretty active on there. So yeah, just my name is Damian Schechter for anyone that wants to type that in. I'm sure
And don't worry, all those details will be in the show notes. So I've made it, or I will make it very, very easy for people to be able to connect with you. So thank you very, very much. I have loved our conversation today. It has been absolutely fantastic. I know that people will have gotten a lot from the conversation. So thank you very much for your time.
Lesley, it's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.